All right, thank you everybody. So, fun fact, this actually isn't even my first lecture of the day. This is my second lecture of the day, as Karen, my advisor, can attest to. So if I get a bit hoarse, I have to go drink some water. Apologies. My talk is called Only a Sith Deals in Absolutes, and it's by me. And I'm going to start off with just a bit of an icebreaker because I like to do that. So, who in this room is really just the best at something? Like has a really cool skill? Yes.
Baking.
Baking. Baking's great. Anybody else? Who else is the best at something? Yes.
I can lick my elbow.
That's amazing.
Nobody else can lick my elbow on the plane.
Anyone else? Can we get a third? Danny?
I know a ridiculous amount about the interest rate higher system.
Wow. I'm sure you're the best. Yeah?
I'm pretty good at making detailed index cards.
Yeah, no, it's great. These are great things. These are great skills. Okay, so all that aside, just put that in your memory for later because I'm not even going to touch on it for a while. This is Andrew Maurer.
Yeah!
Show of hands, how many of you know Andrew Maurer?
He's the best.
Yeah? Okay, this side of the room. So if you've spent some time with Andrew, then you know he's a pretty great dude, right? Yeah?
Yes.
Can we make that? Can we agree?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. But if you've taken the bulk of your college classes with Andrew, like I have, then you also know that he's a ridiculous chemist. And I mean ridiculous in the sense that if I were to hedge my bets on one of my classmates winning a Nobel Prize in something, I would put my money on Andrew. Andrew would hate that I'm saying this about him right now, by the way. But why do I mention Andrew? Well, I'm using him as kind of a jumping off point. As you see, when you get to CMU, you're kind of confronted with 100 Andrews. And I don't literally mean 100 Andrews. That would be ridiculous. I mean 100 people who, like Andrew, are incredibly gifted at something, who show an incredible aptitude towards one thing. People like Andrew, at least in my opinion, are kind of like the creme de la creme, the 1%, whatever you want to call it. They're great. But you don't just meet people who are academically gifted at Carnegie Mellon. You meet these people. You meet people like Stephen Murphy, who's not only one of the most talented musicians and singers I have ever met, but on a talent basis, he could hold his own with any of the acting majors in CFA. And if you know Stephen, don't tell him I said this because it will go straight to his head. And I'm looking at you, Scotch'n'Soda.
Trust me.
Yeah, Ollie. Hi, Ollie.
Hi.
And then there's Kai Roberts, who is my good friend from freshman year, who is one of the most rhythmically gifted rappers I've ever met in my life, or even heard, period. And if you're someone like me, when I came out of high school, if you're someone like me, and I know that there are people like me out there, when you get here and you see these people, it crushes you. Now, I'm not saying this is everyone's experience. I'm saying it's my experience. Because my gut reaction is to deal in absolutes. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that for whatever reason, somewhere along the lines, I was hardwired to think either I am the best at something or I am useless. And I know that there are perfectly balanced people out there who don't think like this at all and are just very well self-motivated and balanced, and that's great, but there are tons of people who are not. And if you're like I was when I got to CMU, then your validation depended entirely on your ability to outcompete other people. And that mentality is so messed up, because in that moment where you're thinking like that, you're thinking like a Sith. Well, that's the tagline of this talk, is you're thinking like a Sith. So, I like Star Wars. So, I'd like to reflect on that. I'd like to reflect on where that mentality comes from. And I'd like you to read this quote. It says, "At Sith Academy, students were encouraged to challenge one another and fight for prestige that would be recognized by the headmaster of the academy." From Wikipedia. It's a Wikipedia, but for Star Wars. So I want you to take yourself and I want you to look back to here. Actually, no, I want you to take yourself further back and look back to here. We were all placed in these nice, neat little lines at our own neat little tables and told to pay attention as an adult at the front of the room told us about stuff. It's kind of like what I'm doing to you right now. And I will be handing out the exam later. But that's not it. You don't just sit in these desks. You do a math problem on the board. You read aloud from a book. You compete in spelling bees. I don't know, whatever it is. But suddenly, everything you do is on a stage. And you know, we used to make fun of the kids who couldn't do things very well. We used to call people stupid behind their backs. We used to know who the dumb kids were in school. Did anybody call anybody a dumb kid? Did you ever separate yourself into a group of I'm in the smart kids and I'm in the dumb kids? Who did that? I did. Yeah? You were one of the smart kids, and you could have, if I said, who was a dumb kid in your high school, you could think, oh yeah, that guy, right? Yeah, you could think of someone? See, that's really messed up, because I think in my high school, people were separated into these two categories. They were separated into smart and dumb. And yeah, there were jocks, there were theater kids, there were geeks, whatever, but the jocks were dumb, the band geeks were smart, the normal geeks were smart, and that was the label that was given to each individual group. There was smart or dumb. And no one ever says anything like, oh, I guess geometry's not his subject, but he was really good in, I don't know, the football game the other day, and that's really cool. He's dumb. Or, you know, maybe English isn't his strong point, but he's got an A in calculus. No, that kid's dumb. Before you realize it, it establishes this dichotomy in your head. It's the I'm great or I'm worthless mentality. And it sneaks up on you because for all of high school, we're on the winning team. We're in Team Smart. And that mentality is rewarding to us because people at CNU won that game. So you don't question it. And then when you get here, if you're like me, this is how your brain works and you fall into the bottom part. But the whole point of this talk is that you need to reject this. Because it pigeonholes your brain into a way of thinking that is very limiting. Because you stop thinking of things on your own terms. Instead, it's, I'm falling behind, I better sleep less and work harder. Still not better, work even harder, sleep even less. And so many CNU students fall into that trap. And when you do that, when you fall into that trap, you are thinking like anybody?
A Sith.
A Sith. But it's possible to lose that competitive mindset. So it's possible to lose that competitive mindset. At least for me, that's what I had to do in order to be successful here. Because when you lose that constant nagging, screechy little voice back there that's telling you to focus on getting better, being better, outscoring, out resume building, outperforming everyone else, you suddenly aren't afraid to do anything. So this is the Earth. You're familiar with it, right? Everyone's familiar with the Earth? How many of you want to change it? Wow, that's a lot of people. No, Michelle, you don't want to change the Earth? I'm sorry. Well, these next two, they're not. I'm about to drop my own revelation on you, which is that you don't need to be a genius to change the world. I'm going to give you an example. My goal in life is to go into oncology, so this is a great example. Scientists and physicians were testing and developing harsh chemotherapeutic agents and radical surgeries for years. Decades of slowly poisoning their patients, exacting entire regions of flesh and muscle down through the pectorals, out into the lymph nodes under the armpit, just to purge breast cancer cells from their patients. In fact, some doctors would treat their patients with such chemical intensity that they would develop a second different type of cancer from the drugs used to treat their first cancer. And then somewhere in the mix of all of this mentality, someone came along and said something to the tune of, you know what, why don't we just regularly check our patients for cancer and then we can catch it earlier? And the mammogram was born. And Jesus Christ, what a stupidly obvious idea that is. Because there's nothing to perfect, there's nothing to analyze, there's nothing to synthesize, extract, characterize, anything like that. You just check for cancer regularly and it saves lives. And that's revolutionary. And it's revolutionary because it represents a departure from a very set-in-stone, goal-directed approach. oh, you have cancer, kill it with drugs or cut it out. It's not working, use more drugs, cut deeper. There's a goal and there's a way to achieve that goal. But the guy who invented the mammogram, and his name is Albert Salomon, in case you care, because otherwise I'd just keep calling you mammogram guy. He redefined the goal. See, because he made it into something that was achievable. Because mammograms don't cure cancer by any means. They do nothing to actually treat cancer, but they still prevent people from dying of it. The geniuses of the world, they're going to make miracle drugs. They can design scanners and imaging tools and game-changing tech. That's a lot of people at this school, but it's not me. I'm more like Albert Salomon. Because it doesn't take a genius to think of that, and it's no less useful. So some harsh truths for me that I had to take into account were, it isn't enough to work hard at everything. People are not born as blank slates. They have talents, they have aptitudes that are inherent to them. And yeah, work will help you improve, and yeah, you can get lucky sometimes, but you're always going to be at a disadvantage to the people that have that inherent talent. And even if I were to work as hard as I possibly could, pushing myself day in and day out, I'm never going to be as good as Andrew or Stephen or Kai at the things that they are best at. I can never be like them, and I will never reach that level of excellence in the things that they excel in. But none of this means that I can't do something to change the world. It just means that I can't change the world in the same way they will. I need to do it my own way. Now, I was actually sitting in a pre-med seminar the other day for applicants for this cycle for medical school. And someone asked the question, he said, how do I justify that all of my activities are relevant to medical school? And I thought, what? That's crazy. That is such absolutist thinking, because here's what I, as a proud med school applicant, have to boast about. In my time at Carnegie Mellon, I've taken classes in philosophy, psychology, punk rock, German, singing, improv comedy, sound recording, and quantum mechanics. But forget about the things I learned in class, because you know what else I learned here? I learned how to make Pan-Asian cuisine, how to dance the Charleston, how gravitational lensing works, how to ride a unicycle for about 30 feet, how they made the hobbits look so small on Lord of the Rings, how to solder a new headphone jack into a pair of headphones, and how to do a Zoidberg impression. I've built a guitar. I've cut my hair in funny ways. I've had fun in lab. I've dressed up as an acetone bottle for Halloween. I've fought with kendo swords on the steps of Mellon Institute. I've hiked up mountains. I've made pizza with friends. I've played music. I've chaired a senate. I've worn nothing but lederhosen in front of a large crowd of people. I've done whatever I'm doing in this picture. And yet, none of these things make me any better than, or any more qualified than, or superior to anybody in this room. Because none of these things contribute in any way, shape, or form to the status or your concept of status that you hold in your head. And the only way I was able to do any of these things was by rejecting the notion that I had something to prove to someone. By rejecting the notion that I had to be the best at something. I freed myself from stress, the fear of failure that prevented me from doing the things that make me happy. From the things that make me a person. And I'm standing here talking to you about, I'm standing here talking to you because someone decided that I was successful enough to do so. And I agree that I am successful because, you know what's amazing is when I stopped worrying about the competitiveness and stopped thinking about my status in relation to my peers, when I gave up on the notion of self-worth, that the notion of my self-worth was related to my statistics. When I stopped worrying about stupid things like not sleeping because my classmates don't, the grades came. They came up. Things fell into place. Because a happy mind is an attentive mind. Because I can't think clearly when I'm stressed out. Because sleep makes you happy. I think I was successful here at CMU, but not because I've been academically successful, not because I've landed a cool job or invented a cool techie gadget. I haven't done any of those things. I'm standing up here because I figured out that the world is yours as long as you learn to look at it in your own terms. As long as you reject the notion that there are only two types of people in this world, winners and losers. As long as you stop seeing yourself as an absolute. Because only a Sith deals in absolutes. I was hoping you guys would say that. You didn't. And that's what I learned at CMU.